He called me legacy bloat in front of the entire engineering team, said I was holding back progress with my outdated mindset, so when he decided to deploy my old prototype without checking the documentation. I stayed silent. I watched him type the command, watched him hit enter, watched $17 million vanish in 1.6 seconds. They wanted lean and agile, I gave them broken and bankrupt. And the beautiful part, every warning I'd sent was time-stamped, archived, and waiting in my red folder. My name is Natalie Ford, and for 12 years, I was the ghost in Trinexia Solutions machine. Not the kind that haunts, the kind that keeps everything running while everyone else sleeps. Senior systems engineer. They called me. Though the title never quite captured what I actually did, I was the one who built the financial processing platform that handled 47 million transactions daily. The one who knew why Server 17 always ran hot on Thursdays. The one who could trace a data corruption back through 6 integration layers without breaking a sweat. Until Gavin Brooks walked through our glass doors. He came in like Silicon Valley royalty, 34 years old, Stanford MBA, previous stint at some unicorn startup that burned through 50 million in VC funding before quietly folding. Our board loved him. Young blood, they said, fresh perspective. Someone who could transform our legacy infrastructure into a modern, agile ecosystem. I remember our first all-hands meeting. Conference room Delta, 9:15 a.m. sharp. Gavin stood at the front in his $2,000 sneakers and untucked shirt. The uniform of disruption, apparently. His presentation deck was all minimalist fonts and buzzwords, technical debt, innovation velocity, lean methodology. We need to be honest about our challenges, he said, clicking to a slide that showed our system architecture, my architecture. This is what's holding us back. 15 years of accumulated complexity, bloated code bases, legacy thinking. His laser pointer circled my work like a vulture over carrion. Some of you, he continued, making eye contact with me for just a second too long, have been here since the beginning. You've built impressive things, but impressive doesn't mean efficient. We're carrying too much weight from the past. Someone coughed. Papers shuffled. The room felt smaller. Starting next quarter, we're rebuilding from scratch. Serverless architecture, microservices, cloud native, and we're going to do it fast, 6-week sprints. Rapid deployment. No more 18-month implementation cycles. I kept my expression calm, fingers moving steadily across the keyboard. Internally, I was already drafting his downfall. Not in the literal sense watching his career unravel would be satisfying enough. After the meeting, Gavin cornered me by the elevator banks. Up close, he smelled like artisanal coffee and unearned confidence. Natalie, right, I've heard a lot about you. They say you know this system better than anyone. 12 years will do that, I replied. 12 years. He said it like I'd confessed to a crime. That's a long time in tech. Things change fast. Sometimes the best thing we can do is admit when it's time to let go of the old ways. The old ways process 17 billion in transactions annually without a single major incident. He smiled that particular Silicon Valley smile that says, I'm disrupting you, and you don't even know it yet. Without incident doesn't mean optimal. We're leaving money on the table. My projections show we could cut operational costs by 40% with modern infrastructure. Your projections assume the infrastructure actually works. It will. I've done this before. He pressed the elevator button even though it was already lit. I'd love your input during the transition. Your institutional knowledge could be helpful for documentation purposes. Documentation purposes. Corporate speak for tell us everything you know so we can fire you. The elevator arrived. He stepped in first, held the door with one manicured hand. You know, Natalie, there's nothing wrong with being part of the legacy. Someone has to maintain the old systems until we don't need them anymore. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. I felt genuinely delighted about coming to work. You're absolutely right, I said, stepping into the elevator. Someone does need to maintain them. The doors closed between us and his confusion. That night, I went home and opened a new folder on my personal drive. Named it Red Folder. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff. Not the Tuesday night special, and started making copies. Every system diagram, every dependency map, every undocumented feature and quirk that kept our platform from eating itself. But most importantly, I copied the code for Legacy Control 302, my little insurance policy, buried deep in the authentication layer, a kill switch I'd built 5 years ago after a junior developer almost torched our entire database. It was elegant, really an integrity checker that would lock down everything if critical data structures were compromised. Gavin wanted to rebuild without understanding what he was destroying. Fine, I'd give him exactly what he asked for. I raised my glass to the empty room. To lean and agile, I said. May it get exactly what it deserves. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in corporate archaeology. While Gavin assembled his innovation strike team, 6 developers fresh from boot camps and 2 rockstar engineers poached from competitors, I became a digital pack rat. Every night after the office emptied, I'd stay behind, my screen glowing in the darkened floor while I methodically preserved 12 years of institutional knowledge. I copied everything, not just the obvious stuff: source code, documentation, system schemas. I grabbed the forgotten fragments that actually kept us running. The Excel sheet Marcus in accounting used to track reconciliation anomalies. The bash script Sandra wrote to fix that recurring memory leak before she left for maternity leave and never came back. The post-it note passwords photographed and saved because biometric authentication broke every 3rd Tuesday. But I didn't just archive. I annotated. Every file got a timestamp, a context note, a prediction of what would happen when it vanished. Call it paranoia or prescience, I'd seen enough transformations to know how this movie ended. Gavin, meanwhile, was busy being a visionary. He scheduled meetings with titles like Reimagining Our Technical DNA and Breaking the Chains of Legacy Thinking. I attended every single one, sitting in the back row with my laptop, typing notes that looked productive, but were actually detailed documentation of every decision, every dismissal of security protocols, every time someone raised a concern and got shot down with, "That's old world thinking." During one particularly memorable session, a junior developer named Taylor asked about integration testing. What about the existing test suites? Should we port them over? Gavin actually laughed. Test suites from a 15-year-old system. That's like using a horse-drawn carriage GPS. We'll build fresh, lean tests as we go. Agile means adapting, not carrying baggage. I typed, 2:47 p.m. CTO dismisses comprehensive test coverage. Taylor Hoffman witnesses. Recording saved to red folder. The real entertainment came when Gavin discovered our deployment process. We had what I called the 3-key protocol. 3 senior engineers had to sign off on any production push, each verifying different aspects. Financial systems don't forgive cowboy coding. This is exactly the bureaucracy we're eliminating, Gavin announced, pulling up our deployment dashboard on the conference room screen. 3 approvals, 48-hour verification windows. We're not launching nuclear missiles here. Actually, I said, my first words in the meeting, we kind of are. One bad deployment could lock 17 million customer accounts. He turned to me with that patient smile reserved for explaining smartphones to grandparents. Natalie, I appreciate the concern, but modern CI/CD pipelines have safeguards built in. We don't need human bottlenecks. The safeguards you're referring to assume the underlying data structures remain stable. If someone deploys a build that disrupts the legacy authentication layer, which is why we're rebuilding it from scratch, clean slate, no legacy dependencies. I nodded slowly. Of course, just make sure the new team understands the kill switches. Kill switches. His eyebrow arched. That sounds ominous. Fail-safes. The system has several. They're documented in the security protocols. I paused, knowing what came next. The ones you marked for deprecation last week. If they're tied to legacy code, they go, we'll build better ones. I smiled and typed another note. Then I forwarded myself the email chain where I'd warned about removing security protocols, Gavin's dismissive response, and the team distribution list showing who'd seen it all. By week 4, I'd been officially transitioned to advisory consultant, a made-up title that meant, sit quietly while we dismantle your life's work. My access permissions were cut to read-only. My team was reassigned. My desk moved to what we called Siberia, the corner by the server room where the AC never quite worked right. I didn't complain, didn't send passive-aggressive emails, didn't storm into HR. I just kept watching, documenting, waiting. The night before Gavin's team started their final sprint, I ran one last backup. Not just the code, every log file showing who accessed what, every version control commit with timestamps, every Slack message where concerns were raised and ignored. Then I found it, buried in Gavin's Modern Architecture Proposal v3.2. A single line that made me actually laugh out loud in the empty office. Remove redundant validation layer legacy control 302, unnecessary overhead in new system. He had no idea what legacy control 302 actually did. To him, it was just another piece of bloat to cut, another relic of legacy thinking. I screenshotted the proposal, highlighted that line, and saved it to 3 different locations. Then I updated my resume not because I'd need it, but because it felt like the professional thing to do. Walking out that night, I passed the motivational poster Gavin had installed by the elevator, "Move fast and break things." "Oh, Gavin," I whispered to the empty hallway, "if you insist." October arrived with its false promises of fresh starts and fiscal quarters. Gavin's transformation was in full swing, and the office buzzed with the manic energy of people convinced they were making history. Motivational quotes appeared on every wall. Agile coaches ran daily stand-ups. The coffee machines got upgraded to machines that could make 17 types of latte but somehow couldn't brew a decent black coffee. I became furniture, the ghost in Siberia, nursing lukewarm tea while Rome prepared to burn. The email landed on October 2nd, sent to all company at 4:33 p.m. Subject line, "The future is now." Team. After 6 weeks of incredible innovation, I'm thrilled to announce that our new platform will go live on October 12th. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a complete reimagining of how we process financial data. As of 9 a.m. on the 12th, all legacy systems will be permanently decommissioned. We're not just turning off old servers, we're leaving old thinking behind. To our engineers who built the original system, thank you for getting us here. To our new team, thank you for taking us forward. The future doesn't wait, neither do we. Gavin Brooks, CTO. I read it twice, then printed it. Paper has a permanence that pixels lack, and I wanted this moment preserved in analog. Marcus from accounting appeared at my desk an hour later, face pale. "Natalie, did you see?" I saw. "But the quarterly reports run on the legacy system, the audit tools, the reconciliation processes. If they turn it off." "I know." He stared at me, waiting for more, for panic, for a plan, for the Natalie who used to fix things, but that Natalie had been reclassified as legacy bloat. "Aren't you going to do something?" I smiled. "I'm going to finish my tea." That afternoon, I attended what would be my last architecture review. Gavin had made them optional for advisory consultants, but I showed up anyway, settling into my back row seat with a fresh notebook. Taylor, the junior developer who'd asked about tests, was presenting the new data validation schema. Smart kid. Shame about the company he kept. "So we've streamlined the validation process," Taylor explained, pulling up a flowchart that looked like someone had taken my original design and removed all the parts that made it work. "Instead of multiple redundant checks, we have a single point of verification." "What about race conditions?" I asked, my voice cutting through the appreciative murmurs. Taylor faltered. "Race conditions. When 17,000 transactions hit that single point simultaneously, what happens?" Gavin intervened. "That's exactly the kind of edge case paranoia that created the bloated system we're replacing. Modern frameworks handle concurrency natively. Modern frameworks assume modern infrastructure. We're running on servers that think RAM is a luxury and uptime is a suggestion. Which is why we're moving to the cloud next quarter. Stay focused on the present, Natalie." I wrote in my notebook, 4:51 p.m. CTO confirms no stress testing for legacy infrastructure compatibility. The meeting continued. They'd removed my kill switch. Of course. Legacy Control 302 was gone, deleted with the same casual confidence you'd use to empty a recycle bin. In its place was nothing. Just the assumption that data would flow correctly because they'd drawn pretty arrows on a whiteboard. But here's what Gavin didn't understand. You can delete code, but you can't delete dependencies. Legacy Control 302 wasn't just a validation check, it was a pointer, a reference, a tiny piece of logic that told 3 other systems how to interpret transaction data. Without it, those systems would default to their original settings. Settings from 2009 when our data structure was completely different, when customer IDs were 8 digits instead of 12, when transaction codes used alphabetical prefixes instead of numerical ones. The new system would send modern data into ancient pipelines, like trying to pump rocket fuel through a garden hose. I sat through the rest of the meeting, taking notes I'd never share, watching them plan their own funeral. When it ended, I packed up slowly, letting the room empty. Gavin stopped me at the door. "Natalie, I'm glad you came. Your questions are thought-provoking." "Just doing my job." "About that." He shifted, CEO smile flickering. "After the migration, we'll be restructuring the advisory roles, focusing on forward-thinking positions. I wanted you to hear it from me first." "I appreciate the heads up. You've been here a long time. You've earned transparency." He patted my shoulder, the gesture somehow both condescending and dismissive. "Take the next week to document any critical knowledge, for posterity." I looked him straight in the eye. "Oh, I've documented everything, every decision, every override, every warning." Something flickered across his face, confusion. Maybe, or the first hint of concern, but it passed quickly, buried under startup confidence and MBA certainty. "Good. That's good. Documentation is important." "Critical," I agreed, "especially when things go wrong." I left him standing there and walked back to Siberia. From my desk, I could see the server room through the reinforced glass window. Those servers had been my children, my puzzle, my purpose for 12 years. In 10 days, Gavin would pull their plugs like turning off old Christmas lights. I opened my red folder, now swollen with evidence, and added one last file, CTO termination notice PDF, my own pink slip, delivered with corporate efficiency. Then I created a new document, titled it Kill Switch Manual, Confidential. But I didn't write anything. Sometimes the most elegant code is the code that isn't there. The final week descended like a fog. My advisory role had been reduced to its purest form, I advised. They ignored. The clock ticked toward disaster. My desk in Siberia became command central for watching a slow-motion catastrophe, complete with a front-row view of the server room where my life's work would soon flatline. On Monday, October 7th, they officially revoked my production access. The email came at 8:19 a.m., signed by Gavin, but clearly written by HR. As part of our security modernization, system access is being realigned with current responsibilities. I forwarded it to my personal email, adding it to the collection. Tuesday brought the new deployment schedule. Taylor posted it in the engineering Slack with nervous excitement. Final push scheduled for October 12th, 9 a.m. sharp. Who's ready to make history? I was ready, just not the kind of history he imagined. That afternoon, I did something uncharacteristic. I spoke up, not in protest that ship had sailed, but in one last attempt at professional courtesy. I found Taylor at his desk, surrounded by energy drink cans and the false confidence of youth. "Hey," I said, pulling up a chair. "About Friday's deployment." He tensed. The old guard approaching was never a good sign in Gavin's New World Order. "What about it?" "You're good at this," I said, meaning it. "In a different company, different situation, you'd go far. So I'm going to give you one piece of advice." He leaned back, trying to look casual. "Okay." "Back up everything manually, not just the automated snapshots everything. Download it locally if you have to, before 9 a.m. on Friday." "Why would I?" "Because automated systems fail. Because sometimes the safety net has holes. Because when things go wrong, the person holding the keyboard gets blamed, not the one holding the vision." His eyes darted around, checking if anyone was listening. "Is there something specific I should know about?" I could have told him about Legacy Control 302, about the dependency cascade, about what happens when you rip out a foundation without understanding what it was supporting. But Gavin had made it clear legacy thinking wasn't welcome here. "Just back up everything," I repeated. "Consider it insurance." I left him there, staring at his screens with new uncertainty. Wednesday. I cleaned my desk. Not because I was sentiment was legacy thinking, but because I wanted to leave nothing behind. Every note, every diagram, every post-it with a password or process tip went into my bag. Let them start truly fresh. While packing, I found the printout of Legacy Control 302's core logic, folded and forgotten in a drawer, 27 lines of code that kept 17 million accounts from cannibalizing each other. I held it up to the light, studying it like an architect might study the blueprint of a building scheduled for demolition. Then I folded it back up and slipped it into my pocket, a souvenir. Thursday was quieter. The new team huddled in conference rooms, running through their checklists. Gavin strutted between meetings like a general before battle, dispensing motivation and caffeine in equal measure. I sent one final email. Not to Gavin, he'd made his position clear. Not to the CEO, she'd chosen her champion. I sent it to Taylor, CCing the entire engineering distribution list. Team. As tomorrow marks a significant transition, I wanted to share a final thought from my advisory position. Change is inevitable in technology. Systems evolve, architectures modernize, teams transform. This is natural and often necessary. However, wisdom lies in understanding what we're changing and why. Every line of code, every validation check, every seemingly redundant process exists for a reason. Sometimes that reason is obsolete. Sometimes it's the only thing standing between order and chaos. I encourage you all to document not just what you're building, but what you're replacing and why. Future engineers, maybe even future you, will thank you for it. Best of luck with tomorrow's deployment. Natalie Ford, Advisory Consultant Rep. I didn't mention the kill switch. Didn't warn about the specific cascade failure waiting in their blind spot. They'd deleted the cure while keeping the disease, but my warnings had been dismissed as legacy thinking. Let them discover the future they'd so carefully engineered. Gavin replied within minutes, CCing the same list. Thanks for the thoughts. Natalie, documentation is indeed important, which is why we've built it into our agile process. Looking forward to showing everyone what modern architecture can do. I printed that email too, added it to my folder. Evidence has a way of aging well. That night, I stayed late one last time. Not to sabotage, I didn't need to. Not to fix, I wasn't allowed to. I stayed to say goodbye to the servers, humming behind their glass wall. Tomorrow, someone would flip their switches for the last time, convinced they were putting down aged horses. They didn't know those horses were the only things keeping the carriage from rolling off a cliff. At 11:47 p.m., I sent myself one final backup. Not of code or documentation, I had plenty of that. I backed up the system logs showing every override, every ignored warning, every decision that led to tomorrow's 9 a.m. appointment with Destiny. Then I turned off my workstation, left my keycard on the desk, and walked out of Trinexia Solutions for what I assumed would be the last time. The security guard nodded as I passed. Another late night, Miss Ford. The last one, I said. He chuckled. See you Monday. I smiled. We'll see. Outside, the October air bit sharp and clean. I sat in my car for a moment, looking back at the building that had been my second home for 12 years. Somewhere in there, Taylor was probably still working, hopefully taking my advice about backups. Somewhere in there, Gavin was probably dreaming of his triumph. I started my engine and drove home, set my alarm for 8:45 a.m. I wanted to be awake when the future arrived. Friday, October 12th, 8:45 a.m. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of Earl Grey and my laptop, watching the engineering Slack channel like a trader watching the markets before a crash. The excitement was palpable even through text. T-minus 15 minutes. History in the making. Bye-bye, legacy. Gavin had posted a photo of himself at the deployment terminal, thumb hovering over the enter key like a president about to launch something significant. Caption, one small click for tech, one giant leap for Trinexia. 8:57. Taylor came online. Final checks complete. All systems green. 8:59. The channel exploded with countdown messages. 9 a.m. Gavin posted, it's live. Welcome to the future, everyone. For exactly 1 minute and 37 seconds, the future looked bright. Celebrations flooded the channel. Emoji reactions hit critical mass. Someone started a "Legacy is Dead" GIF thread. Then, at 9:01 and 37 seconds, the first domino fell. Is anyone else seeing auth errors on Portal 3? One message. That's all it took. Getting timeout issues on transaction batch 447. Customer dashboard is showing blank for Bank of America accounts. Why are all the transaction IDs showing as negative numbers? I sipped my tea and pulled up our status page on my personal laptop. Still had access to that public-facing. After all, the green checkmark started flickering to yellow, then orange, then red. 903. Urgent freeze all deployments. Something's wrong with data mapping. 904. We're getting integrity violations across 17 million records. 905. Who authorized this build? The Slack channel descended into chaos. I opened a second window to monitor our public Twitter feed. The first customer complaint hit at 9:06. Hey, at Trinexia Solutions. Why is my account showing a balance of negative $12 billion? By 9:09, the mainstream tech blogs had picked it up. Major financial platform Trinexia experiencing widespread outages. The engineering channel had gone from celebration to panic to grim determination. Taylor was posting rapid-fire updates, trying to trace the cascade, but I knew what he'd find, or rather, what he wouldn't find. Legacy Control 302 wasn't there to catch the mismatch between old and new data structures. The system was trying to process 2024 formatted data through 2009 pipelines. Customer IDs were being truncated. Transaction codes were being misinterpreted. The entire authentication layer was having an existential crisis. At 9:17, I watched Gavin type the message that would haunt him. What the fuck is Legacy Control 302? Someone found my old documentation and pasted it into the chat. A simple description: critical validation checkpoint for data structure integrity. Do not remove without comprehensive migration testing. The channel went quiet for 30 seconds. Then, Gavin. Who removed this Taylor? It was in the optimization list you approved. Gavin. I need a rollback now. DevOps. Rollback failed. The old system was decommissioned as per your instructions. Gavin. Then restore from backup DevOps. The automated backup system was tied to the legacy infrastructure. It went offline at 9 a.m. I nearly choked on my tea. They'd killed the backups too. That was beyond hubris. That was Greek tragedy territory. Taylor. I have manual backups from yesterday. Gavin. Then use them. Taylor. They're on my local machine, in the office. I'm remote today. The irony was delicious. The only person who'd listened to my advice was working from home on the day it mattered most. By 9:30, the CEO had entered the channel. Someone explained to me why I have the Federal Reserve on line 1. The public status page was now solid red. Every system, every service, every customer-facing platform was either down or serving garbage data. Our phone system, also modernized, had crashed under the load of angry customers. But the best part, the absolute chef's kiss of the morning, came at 9:47 when someone discovered the full scope of the disaster. The integrity exceptions are spreading to historical data. Every transaction since 2009 is being retroactively corrupted. 17 million customers, 15 years of financial records, all eating themselves alive because Gavin Brooks thought kill switches were legacy thinking. I finished my tea and opened a new browser tab. Started browsing flights to Iceland. Winter was coming, but I'd heard the northern lights were spectacular this time of year. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. But I recognized the area code. Corporate. I let it ring. Then I opened my red folder, found the email where I'd warned about removing Legacy Control 302, and added a timestamp 9:51 a.m., 17 million integrity violations and counting. The future had arrived right on schedule, and it was exactly as broken as I'd documented it would be. By 10:15 a.m., my phone had become a percussion instrument. Corporate calls, engineering numbers, even a few journalists who'd somehow gotten my personal cell. I let them all go to voicemail, building a symphony of digital desperation. The first in-person visitor arrived at 11:23. Marcus from accounting stood on my doorstep, still in his office clothes but looking like he'd aged 5 years in 2 hours. Natalie, thank God you're home. Marcus, I kept the door half closed. Shouldn't you be at the office? The office it's chaos. The CEO called an all hands. Gavin's locked in the server room with the DevOps team. The FBI called. He paused, swallowed. The FBI. Natalie. Federal banking regulations are federal for a reason. They need you. The system it keeps throwing errors about something called legacy control. Nobody understands it. Taylor showed them your documentation. But it's not enough. They need the person who built it. I leaned against the doorframe. They have the person who rebuilt it. Please, I know Gavin was an ass. I know they pushed you out. But this is bigger than one man's ego. I finished. Yes, it is. It's about 17 million people's financial data, which is why I sent detailed warnings about removing critical systems. Warnings that were dismissed as legacy thinking. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, paled further. They're saying the corruption is accelerating. Something about cascade failures in the reconciliation engine. Of course, the reconciliation engine relied on 3-point verification, one of which was wait for it legacy control 302. Without it, the system was trying to balance books with phantom data, creating exponential errors with each cycle. Marcus, do you remember the meeting where I explained the triple redundancy architecture? The one where Gavin said redundancy was just another word for waste. That one. I stepped back. I'm sorry, I can't help. His face crumpled. Can't or won't. I don't have access. They revoked it Monday. Remember, I'm just an advisory consultant. My keycard's on my old desk. But you know the system. I knew the system, the one they just destroyed. I don't know Gavin's lean, agile replacement. Nobody does. Apparently. My laptop chimed from the kitchen. Another news alert. The story had gone national. Marcus made one last attempt. They're talking about criminal negligence. People could go to jail. Then they should have thought about that before deploying untested code to production. I softened slightly. You backed up your reconciliation tools, right? The Excel sheets. He nodded miserably. Good. You'll need them. The manual ones, especially. The ones Gavin called Stone Age artifacts. After Marcus left, I returned to my laptop. The engineering Slack had devolved into digital screaming. Someone had started a thread trying to reverse engineer Legacy Control 302 from my documentation. But they were missing crucial context. You can't rebuild a foundation while the house is collapsing. At 12:47 p.m., the CEO herself called. I recognized her direct line. Let it ring through. The voicemail was terse. Ms. Ford, this is Diane Hutchinson. We need your expertise immediately. Please call back at this number. Time is critical. Time had been critical 6 weeks ago. Now it was just expensive. 1:15 p.m. brought the most interesting development. A text from an unknown number. Natalie, this is Taylor. I'm in the parking lot. Can we talk? I appreciated the initiative. Takes guts to track down a personal address during a company meltdown. I texted back. Front door, 5 minutes. He looked worse than Marcus. Red eyes, coffee-stained shirt, hands shaking slightly. I should have listened better. You listened more than most. You made backups. Manual backups, like you said. He held up an external drive like it was made of plutonium. Everything from Thursday night, but I can't. The restoration process needs elevated access, and the authentication system is eating itself, yes. Can you fix it? I studied him, young, talented, thrown into deep water by someone who insisted swimming was outdated. Taylor, what exactly are you asking me to do? Help us restore the system. You built it. You understand it. You're the only one who... I'm unemployed. As of today, officially terminated. I have no access, no authorization, no legal standing to touch Trinexia's infrastructure. He stared at the drive in his hands. People are going to lose everything. Retirement accounts, savings, 17 million people who did nothing wrong except trust us with their money. The kid had a point, but he was missing the larger one. Taylor, did you read my final email, the one about documentation? He nodded. Do you know why I emphasized understanding what you're replacing? Because we need to know the dependencies. Because systems aren't just code, they're promises. Every function, every validation check, every redundant safety measure is a promise that will protect what people entrust to us. Gavin broke those promises, systematically, deliberately, with full warnings about the consequences. I pulled out my phone. Showed him my red folder index. Every decision, every warning, every ignored concern, it's all here, time-stamped and authenticated. His face went through several expressions before landing on understanding. You're not going to help. I'm not going to interfere with Gavin's vision. He wanted full ownership of the future. He's got it. Even if innocent people suffer. Innocent people were always going to suffer. The only question was whether the person responsible would be held accountable. I gestured at his drive. That backup might help, eventually. But first, they need to understand why it failed. Really understand, not just the technical reasons, the hubris, the arrogance of dismissing expertise as legacy thinking. Taylor left looking hollow. I felt bad for him, genuinely. But some lessons can't be taught. They have to be lived. By 3 p.m., the Trinexia status page had added a new color to its palette, black. Total system failure. The first class action lawsuit had already been filed. I closed my laptop, poured another cup of tea, and started researching Iceland seriously. The exchange rate was favorable, and they had excellent internet infrastructure, perfect for remote consulting. My phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number immediately. The chairman of the board. I answered on the third ring. Hello, Robert? Natalie. His voice was carefully controlled. I assume you've been following the situation. Hard to miss. We need to discuss your immediate reinstatement. With what title, Chief? I told you so, officer. Silence. Then, what do you want? Now that was the right question. Finally, what do I want? I repeated Robert's question, savoring each word like aged wine. Right now, I want to finish my Earl Grey, but I suppose you're asking about Trinexia's future. Natalie, this isn't a game. We're hemorrhaging money. 17 million in direct losses and climbing. The Fed is threatening to suspend our license. You need Gavin Brooks to face the consequences of his decisions. Silence stretched between us. I could hear urgent voices in his background. The crisis room symphony. Gavin is no longer in a position to make technical decisions. Is that corporate speak for still employed but hiding in his office? Robert's sigh could have powered a wind farm. The board is meeting at 4 p.m. to discuss leadership changes. Good. Make them, then call me back. Natalie. I hung up. Some negotiations require patience. This one required gravity, and gravity takes time to work. By 3:45, the screenshots started appearing on Twitter. Internal emails, leaked by someone with nothing left to lose. Gavin dismissing concerns. Gavin overriding protocols. Gavin's move fast and break things poster becoming the most ironic image on the internet. At 4:27, Diane Hutchinson called again. This time, I answered. Ms. Ford, Gavin Brooks is no longer with the company. Effective immediately. Terminated or resigned. Does it matter? To his lawyers, probably. She cleared her throat. The board has authorized me to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer, with full autonomy to restore our systems and prevent future incidents. Compensation to be negotiated, but I assure you, I don't want CTO. Pause. Then what? I want my old job back. Senior systems engineer. Same desk, well, not the Siberia one. Same responsibilities. Same team. If any of them survived Gavin's purge. Natalie, we're offering you the C-suite. Stock options. Executive parking. The works. I don't want the works. I want to work on systems, not PowerPoints. But the restoration requires someone who understands the code, not someone who attends board meetings. I pulled up my red folder, reviewing my notes one last time. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to email me a formal apology acknowledging that my warnings were ignored. You're going to restore my full access immediately, and you're going to let me bring in Taylor Hoffman as my lead junior engineer. The one who made the backups. The only one who listened. Kid's got potential, despite Gavin's best efforts to ruin him. Anything else? I smiled at my reflection in the laptop screen. Yes, I want Gavin's Move Fast and Break Things poster for my cubicle, as a reminder. The call ended with promises of contracts and access restoration within the hour. I knew they'd deliver. Desperation is a powerful motivator. At 5:15, I drove to the office for the second time in 12 years wearing jeans and a t-shirt. The parking lot was chaos news vans, federal vehicles, employees standing in clusters like survivors of a natural disaster. Security waved me through without checking ID. Apparently, my photo had been circulated with "Save Us" written underneath. Not literally, probably. The engineering floor felt like a war zone. Pizza boxes stacked like fortifications. Energy drinks creating caffeine graveyards. Developers slumped at desks, staring at screens full of errors they couldn't comprehend. I found Taylor in conference room Delta, the same room where Gavin had declared war on legacy thinking. He looked up when I entered, hope and exhaustion battling for control of his face. "Brought your backup?" I asked. He held up the drive with shaking hands. "Good. First rule of system restoration: breathe." I moved to the whiteboard, still covered with Gavin's architectural diagrams, picked up a red marker, drew a single X through the entire thing. Second rule: understand what you're fixing before you fix it. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through the real architecture, not the simplified version in the documentation, not the clean version Gavin had tried to build, the messy, redundant, paranoid version that actually worked. I explained Legacy Control 302, not just what it did, but why it existed, the near catastrophe of 2019 that had prompted its creation, the 3 senior engineers who'd spent 6 months building unbreakable validation, the reason it was called 302, the number of edge cases it handled. By 8 p.m., we had a plan, not a perfect one. Perfection was Gavin's fantasy, a workable one. Using Taylor's backups, we could restore the Thursday night state. The 14 hours of Friday transactions would need manual reconciliation, but Marcus's Stone Age Excel sheets would handle that. As Taylor initiated the restoration sequence, I pulled out my phone. One unread message from Robert. "The board has accepted all your terms. Welcome back." I deleted it. I wasn't back. I'd never left. I'd just been waiting in the wings while the star of the show learned that spotlights can burn. At 9:17 p.m., exactly 12 hours after Gavin's click, the first green checkmark appeared on the status page. "It's working," Taylor breathed. "It's starting to work," I corrected. "We've got days of cleanup ahead, maybe weeks, but yeah, it's working." He turned to me, young face serious. "Why didn't you stop this? You could have prevented it all." I looked at him, saw myself 20 years ago, believing that competence could overcome corporate politics. "Taylor, I tried to stop it, with warnings, with documentation, with every tool except the one that actually worked, letting them fail. But the customers will be made whole, insurance, federal guarantees, and a very expensive lesson for the board about the cost of ignoring expertise." I started packing up my laptop. Sometimes the only way to kill a bad idea is to implement it perfectly. He sat with that for a moment. Then, "Is that why you kept such detailed records?" I smiled. "Legacy thinking has its advantages. We remember things. We document things. We prepare for things." I paused at the door. "And sometimes, we let overconfident executives deploy untested code to production, because nothing teaches consequences quite like consequences." By 10 p.m., 30% of systems were back online. The bleeding had stopped. The patient would survive. And somewhere in the city, Gavin Brooks was updating his LinkedIn profile, probably blaming legacy infrastructure for his visionary ideas not working out. I didn't feel bad for him. He'd gotten what he wanted, full ownership of a transformation. It just wasn't the transformation he'd expected. Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp. I walked through Trinexia's doors carrying a banker's box and wearing my best debugging cardigan, the one with coffee stains that mapped out 12 years of late-night crisis management. The security guard did a double take. "Ms. Ford, but I thought, didn't you leave?" "Just returning some company property," I said, lifting the box slightly. It wasn't a lie. Inside was Gavin's poster, carefully rolled and secured with a rubber band. Company property, technically. The engineering floor was different now, quieter, humbled. The motivational quotes had vanished overnight, replaced by printouts of system documentation, my documentation. Legacy thinking was suddenly looking pretty smart. I found my old desk, my real desk, not the Siberian exile exactly as I'd left it. Someone had placed a coffee mug on it. "World's most vindicated engineer," I suspected Marcus. Taylor appeared at 8:30, looking like he'd actually slept for once. 97% system restoration as of 6 a.m. The remaining 3% are edge cases, but manageable. Good. I unpacked my box, setting up my workspace with deliberate care. Keyboard positioned just so, monitor height adjusted, Gavin's poster prominently displayed where everyone could see it. Is that a reminder, I said, that moving fast and breaking things has a very literal cost. $17 million, last I heard. $23 million, Taylor corrected. Legal fees. Even better. The morning passed in familiar rhythms, code reviews, system checks, actual testing before deployment revolutionary concept. Apparently, around 11, Diane Hutchinson stopped by. CEO visiting the engineering floor was usually a bad sign, but she just stood there, watching me work. No corner office, she finally asked. Corner offices are where good engineers go to die. I pulled up a monitoring dashboard. I've got everything I need right here. The board is insisting on a full post-mortem, lessons learned, process improvements, the works. Send them my red folder. Every lesson they need is already documented, time-stamped, ignored. She winced. Natalie, I owe you an apology. No, I turned from my screen. You owe me a functioning code review process. You owe me engineers who understand what they're deleting. You owe me executives who listen to expertise even when it's inconvenient. Fair, she straightened her jacket. For what it's worth, the board has implemented new policies. Any architectural change requires sign-off from senior engineering. Any system with over 1 million users needs triple redundancy. Any executive who overrides security protocols faces personal liability. The Gavin Brooks Memorial Policies. We're calling them the Ford Protocols. I almost smiled. I hate it, but I'll take it. She left me to my work by lunch. News of my return had spread. Engineers stopped by with questions, confirmations, and caffeine offerings. The smart ones brought documentation for review. The really smart ones brought apologies for not speaking up sooner. I accepted the coffee. The apologies were unnecessary. We all do what we need to survive in corporate ecosystems. I just chose a more patient method. At 3 p.m., I got an unexpected visitor, Robert from the board, looking less composed than our phone call. I wanted to thank you personally, he said. Your documentation saved us from criminal charges. The FBI was very impressed by your thoroughness. Just doing my job. The job I was hired for 12 years ago. Yes, well, he fidgeted with his cufflinks. I also wanted to inform you that Gavin Brooks is facing civil suits from the shareholders. Your red folder has been subpoenaed. It's backed up in 7 locations. His lawyers can have their pick. Robert studied Gavin's poster on my wall. You know, some board members think you orchestrated this whole thing, that you let the system fail on purpose. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm an engineer. Robert, I don't orchestrate. I document. I warn. I prepare for contingencies. If other people choose to ignore those warnings, that's not orchestration. That's natural selection. He left looking thoughtful, or constipated. Hard to tell with board members. By 5 p.m., the office was emptying out. Normal hours, another revolution in Gavin's absence. I stayed a bit longer, not from necessity but from choice. There was something satisfying about seeing all systems green, all monitors quiet, all databases humming along with their redundant, legacy, gloriously functional code. Taylor stopped by on his way out. Hey, Natalie? That USB drive you asked about, the second one you mentioned to someone. I'm curious what was on it. I smiled. Nothing dramatic, just my side projects, the ones I've been working on during my advisory period. Side projects. Fintech startups are always looking for engineers who understand financial systems, really understand them, not just the theory, but the reality, the edge cases, the things that can go wrong when someone deploys without checking the dependencies. His eyes widened. You're leaving. Eventually, but not yet. This place needs stability, and I've got vacation days to burn. I gestured at the green dashboard. Besides, I want to see how the Ford protocols work out. Consider it professional curiosity. He nodded slowly, processing. Smart kid. He'd go far if he remembered the lessons. After he left, I opened my drawer and pulled out the folded paper, the original printout of Legacy Control 302. 27 lines that had saved a company by not being there when needed. I smoothed it out, then pinned it to my cubicle wall right next to Gavin's poster. Legacy code, legacy thinking, legacy engineer. All badges I'd wear with pride. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Gavin Brooks had updated his profile. Visionary technology leader, architected major transformation at Fortune 500 fintech, open to new opportunities. I screenshotted it, added it to the red folder under a new section, Epilogues. Then I shut down my workstation, gathered my things, and headed for the exit. Tomorrow would bring new code to review, new systems to protect, new executives to train in the art of listening. But tonight I had a flight to book. Iceland was lovely this time of year, and I'd heard they appreciated engineers who understood that some things shouldn't be deleted just because they're old. The security guard waved as I passed. "Have a good evening, Ms. Ford." "The best," I replied. Outside, the October air carried the promise of winter. Seasons would change. Executives would come and go. Systems would evolve. But somewhere in the depths of Trinexia's restored infrastructure, Legacy Control 302 would keep running, watching, waiting. Just like its creator. Some things, after all, are worth preserving, even if you have to let them burn first to prove it. Thank you so much for listening to this story of sweet corporate revenge. Where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know where in the world this tale of legacy code and patient justice has reached. If you enjoyed Natalie's calculated takedown of Silicon Valley arrogance, hit that subscribe button and share your own office revenge stories in the comments. Sometimes the best revenge isn't breaking things, it's letting someone else break them exactly the way you warned them they would.